Trucks have come a long way. They're no longer just utilitarian tools, but that evolution hasn't saved the market. Despite their popularity, the $200 billion truck industry is collapsing faster than experts expected. Dealerships are shutting down permanently. Manufacturing plants are cutting output by 25%. Families are losing their vehicles to repossession at rates not seen since the 2008 crisis. But unlike past auto downturns, this collapse is happening while the broader economy looks stable, making it largely invisible until it hits people directly. The consequences are far-reaching. How will local economies be affected by dealership closures? Why are prices still rising even as sales nosedive? And when will this collapse bleed into other parts of the economy? This isn't just about trucks. It's about the disintegration of affordable transportation for working-class families. Mike Patterson, a veteran Ford sales manager in Oregon, lays it out plainly. People love the trucks they want to buy, but when we run the numbers, it's just not possible. Payments are bigger than mortgages. Prices that seemed ridiculous 5 years ago are now reality. A Ford Bronco Raptor with a $93,000 MSRP sits unsold for months. A GMC Sierra AT4X costing close to $90,000, despite sharing bones with $30,000 work trucks, highlights just how disconnected pricing has become. David Martinez, a Seattle construction foreman, captures the frustration. I've been shopping for 6 months. I need a reliable truck for work, but can't find anything under $60,000 that isn't stripped. I'll keep driving my 12-year-old truck until it dies. I'm not paying more than my house payment for a vehicle. This is the core issue. Truck ownership no longer aligns with household economics. With median U.S. income around $70,000 and average full-size truck prices now topping $64,000, families are facing payments that eat up 30 to 40% of gross income, financially unsustainable territory. The result? Desperation at the dealership level. While showrooms look polished, the back offices tell a darker story. Dealerships rely on floor plan financing, short-term loans to hold inventory. But with daily interest adding up, 27 cents per $1,000 in value, trucks that sit for months cost dealers thousands in financing fees. A $60,000 truck sitting for 200 tills. Days racks up over $3,000 in floor plan interest alone, not counting depreciation or insurance. To offset the loss, many dealers are resorting to unethical tactics. Some title new trucks to employees or relatives, drive them a couple miles to reset odometers, and sell them as used at inflated prices to dodge manufacturer pricing rules and floor plan restrictions. One anonymous Toyota employee admitted, "We're selling a 2024 Tacoma with just 2 miles as used for $45,000. The new version is $43,000. Labeling it used gives us pricing flexibility." This isn't rare. This practice is becoming the norm. These shady strategies were warning signs of a bigger collapse. Our team reviewed 5 years of data across 17,000 truck sales, revealing the exact timeline of the downturn. It didn't happen. Suddenly, it snowballed while manufacturers ignored signs and analysts insisted things would normalize. Top-tier trucks like the Ford Bronco Raptor and Ram TRX, once in high demand, now sit untouched for months. Dealers blamed seasonality. But they were wrong. Interest rates were a brutal wake-up call. Loans that once had 3 to 5% interest are now 8 to 15%, depending on credit. A $60,000 truck that once had a $900 payment now requires $1,300 plus. Yet automakers continued producing expensive models as if nothing had changed, assuming buyers could keep up. Repossessions surged 28% year over year. Trucks account for a large chunk of that, as families who overextended couldn't manage rising costs in housing, food, and energy. The American truck, once a symbol of freedom, is now a financial trap. Consumers are holding onto their vehicles longer. The average age of cars on U.S. roads is rising. Trade-ins have slowed sharply as negative equity locks people out of upgrades. Dealerships that thrived on fast turnover now have empty showrooms and overwhelmed service departments. Then came tariffs. Just the threat of a 25% import tax drove manufacturers to raise prices preemptively, by thousands in some cases. That pushed already overpriced trucks further out of reach, cementing the downturn. This slow-motion collapse continues to build. Silently, many still don't see it, but the cracks in the foundation are spreading fast. When the full weight of this collapse finally hits, it won't just disrupt the truck market, it'll devastate everything in its path. Dealers, manufacturers, and the financial stability of millions of American households, especially those simply trying to purchase a dependable truck, are all caught in a storm. The collapse was always looming, but the surge in prices that triggered it turned out to be far more severe than anyone anticipated. And the numbers are staggering. The truck price explosion step into any truck dealership in the U.S. today, and you're not just seeing shiny chrome and flawless paint. you're witnessing the slow disintegration of the American dream. Pickup trucks. Once symbols of independence, hard work, and family life, now sit idle on lots, transformed into relics of economic dysfunction. A 2-year-old GMC Sierra listed for $94,500. A Ram TRX with options exceeding $125,000. A basic work truck with cloth seats priced at $70,000. These price tags don't just shock, they represent the extinction of middle-class truck ownership. They are hard evidence that something has gone terribly wrong in the U.S. auto market. What used to be a cornerstone of the American lifestyle, owning a strong, reliable pickup, is now a financial trap, crushing families and reshaping the industry. From the outside, dealerships still look successful. Bright lights, spotless showrooms, and cheerful salespeople paint a picture of health. Advertising continues to promise power and rugged appeal. But behind the scenes, it's a different story. Sales teams watch as buyers walk away. Dealerships are losing money on every truck that sits unsold. Each vehicle costs them $5 to $10 a day in financing fees. A truck left sitting for 3 months racks up around $900 in interest alone. Multiply that by hundreds of vehicles, and many dealers are burning $50,000 to $100,000 every month just holding on to their stock. Since 2019, suggested retail prices for trucks have risen 42%, far beyond inflation, wage growth, or any logical increase in value. A base Ford F-150 that sold for $32,000 just a few years ago now starts over $45,000. A mid-spec Silverado, close to $50,000. And then comes the real pain. Financing. The interest rate crisis, the financing picture has become devastating. Interest. Rates that hovered between 3–5% for years have skyrocketed. Today, many buyers face 8 to 15% interest, even more if they have average or below average credit. Millions of Americans now face rates as high as 18 to 20%, and the impact is brutal. A $30,000 truck at 4% interest for 6 years comes with a $460 monthly payment. At 12%, that jumps to $530 and over $6,000 more paid in interest overall. A $45,000 truck at 10% interest? That's over $800 per month before you even factor in insurance, which has doubled in many places. For many, the total monthly cost of owning a truck is approaching $1,000. Electrician Robert Kim from Tacoma shares. My truck payment is bigger than my mortgage. I got it when rates were low, but now I'm upside down by $8,000. I'm stuck, and while buyers are hurting, dealers are faring no better. The dealership. Meltdown truck dealers are facing one of the worst inventory and financing crises in auto history. There are over 25,000 unsold Ram 1500, 2500, and 3500 trucks across the U.S., many sitting idle for over 200 days. Toyota Tundras that once sold in weeks now linger on lots for over 250 days, even with $8,000, $12,000 discounts. A $60,000 truck sitting unsold for 6 months costs over $2,700 in interest fees alone. Multiply that across hundreds of trucks and large dealerships are bleeding tens of thousands in monthly holding costs. The response? Desperation. Deep discounts that would have been unthinkable 2 years ago are now common. $8,000 off Toyota Tundras, $12,000 off F-150. Raptors, 0% financing offers on trucks still wildly overpriced, but even with these deals, sales aren't coming. Tom Walsh, a GM at a major dealership, explains. We're offering deals I never thought I'd see, but buyers either don't qualify or are holding off, knowing the market has to crash further. The used vehicle market, dealers' traditional fallback, has collapsed. Auction prices are down 18% in just months. Trucks dealers expected to offload for $35,000 are now barely fetching $28,000. This has created a vicious cycle. Dealers can't afford to take trade-ins because they're already overstocked. Without trade-ins, many buyers can't afford to buy. Without sales, dealerships can't pay off their flooring debt. This didn't happen overnight. The warning signs were there. Automakers, obsessed with short-term profits, ignored them. Analysts downplayed them. High-end trucks like the Bronco, Raptor, and Ram TRX that once sold within days started sitting for months. At first, dealers blamed the seasons or temporary blips, but that wasn't it. Behind the curtain, dealer desperation. Some dealerships have resorted to questionable tactics. Brand new trucks are being registered under employees' names, driven just a couple of miles, and resold as used to dodge manufacturer pricing rules and reduce financing costs. As dealers fight to survive, the broader collapse continues. 1. That's already obliterating the financial futures of millions of truck buyers across the country. The perfect storm gathered slowly, but the damage it's doing now is fast, furious, and still growing. From gleaming showrooms to shuttering factory lines, a full-blown industry implosion is underway. From family driveways to entire towns, the collapse left devastation in its wake. Like a slow-motion chain reaction, each failure triggered another. Dealerships that had weathered decades of economic storms suddenly faced closure. Manufacturing plants, once reliable sources of generational employment, went silent. Families who had built modest financial security watched it vanish beneath the burden of underwater truck loans and monthly payments they could no longer sustain. This wasn't just a market correction, it was the dismantling of an entire economic ecosystem that had supported millions of American workers for over a century. The first to fall were small independent dealerships, cornerstones of rural truck sales for generations. Family-run businesses, often handed down through multiple generations, couldn't survive the mounting costs of unsold inventory. Jim Patterson, who inherited Patterson Motors in rural Oregon from his father, had hoped to pass it on to his son. Instead, he found himself drowning in $18,000 a month in floor plan interest on vehicles that wouldn't move. "We've got 47 trucks on the lot right now," he said, drained. "At $12 a day per truck, we're losing more than $500 a day, $15,000 a month, before even paying staff or utilities." The numbers simply didn't work anymore. Traditional profit margins of 3 to 5% couldn't offset months of mounting financing costs. What once had been sustainable with a 60-day inventory turn now stretched to 200 days. The wave of closures intensified through spring and summer. Independent dealers who had survived the 2008 recession, COVID shutdowns, and multiple downturns were blindsided by a crisis too deep and unpredictable. Job losses followed fast. Linda Martinez, who had spent 14 years climbing the ranks at Northwest Ford, from receptionist to finance manager, was laid off the day the dealership shut its doors. "I know this community. I've helped hundreds of families buy their first truck," she said. Now 48, she found herself jobless with skills tied to an industry that was collapsing. "This is all I've done," she added. But dealerships are shutting down or cutting staff. No one's hiring. The ripple effects spread across thousands of communities. Skilled technicians suddenly found their knowledge obsolete. Parts departments, once hubs for contractors and small fleets, shut down overnight. Beneath the wreckage, the real victims emerged. Ordinary American families caught in financial ruin, their credit destroyed, their savings wiped out, and their futures uncertain. As truck ownership slipped out of reach, repossessions surged to levels not seen since the Great Depression. Loans that once seemed manageable turned crushing during economic downturns. Lenders repossessed trucks at unprecedented rates as families who stretched their budgets in better times found themselves unable to keep up. Maria Rodriguez from Portland had bought a Ford F-150 2 years earlier when she made $75,000 a year as a construction project manager. After a layoff and pay cut to $52,000, her $897 monthly truck payment became unmanageable. After 6 months of struggling, she voluntarily gave up the truck. "I still owe $14,000 on something I don't even have," she said. "The auction didn't cover the loan. Now I'm stuck with a huge debt, no vehicle, and ruined credit." "I can't get approved for anything," said Rodriguez. Like millions of Americans, her repossession had devastated her credit. Missed payments, voluntary surrenders, and defaults erased decades of financial responsibility. Families who had maintained strong credit throughout their lives suddenly found themselves locked out, unable to get a mortgage, denied credit cards, even rejected from apartment rentals. One of the clearest signs of collapse was the radical shift in consumer behavior. Americans who once swapped vehicles every 3 to 4 years were now holding on to their trucks for 7, 8, even 10 years. This great hold was visible everywhere. Parking lots filled with aging trucks, customers pouring money into repairs rather than replacements. Service departments were overwhelmed as parts demand surged and routine maintenance turned into major overhauls. But the fallout extended far beyond the auto industry. Retail sectors that relied on truck buyers suffered steep losses. Home improvement chains saw sales crater as contractors and homeowners tightened their belts. RV dealerships reported vanishing traffic. Customers could no longer afford to tow boats, trailers, or campers. In towns reliant on truck-dependent industries, entire local economies slipped into recession even as national indicators remained stable. This was the nature of the perfect storm. Every factor compounded the next. Sky-high vehicle prices made financing impossible. Rising interest rates made expensive trucks unaffordable. Excess inventory forced dealers into desperate discounting and shady tactics that further eroded consumer trust. It was a cascading collapse, one that threatened the survival of dealerships, the livelihoods of millions, and the financial security of families nationwide. And yet, the collapse eventually bottomed out. Then came the reset. 6 months into the downturn, the truck market didn't just rebound, it transformed. This wasn't a cyclical slump. It was a seismic shift, breaking long-held assumptions and rewriting the rules of ownership. The long-anticipated price correction hit with devastating force. Trucks that once listed for $70,000 were suddenly moving for $45,000. The reset began in the used market, where repossessed vehicles flooded auctions. Prices dropped 30 to 40% almost overnight. A Ford F-150 that fetched $55,000 in January sold for $38,000 by midsummer. New vehicle prices followed suit. Automakers, forced to confront the unsustainability of their models, quietly adjusted. Ford slashed MSRP on several configurations. GM rolled out value packages that were effectively hidden price cuts. Base models fell hardest, while premium trims held artificially high as manufacturers tried to preserve a luxury image. Meanwhile, dealers, hemorrhaging cash, offloaded inventory below cost just to stay afloat. The new price floor emerged roughly 30% below the market peak, snapping prices back to pre-2023 levels. But this correction came at enormous cost. Thousands of dealerships shuttered permanently. Entire communities lost not just businesses, but vital sources of employment and economic activity. What emerged from the wreckage was a leaner, sobered market and a consumer base forever changed. Tens of thousands of workers lost their jobs. Hundreds of thousands of families suffered financial devastation. The massive price correction created clear winners and losers, but not the ones you'd expect. In fact, who profited from the collapse might surprise you. Winners and losers, the reset reshaped the battlefield. Smart buyers who waited out the chaos found themselves in unprecedented positions of power. Take Sarah Johnson. She'd delayed replacing her aging Silverado for 2 years. "I went from not being able to afford anything," she says, "to having dealers call me with deals." She picked up a truck once listed at $68,000 for just $44,000. Cash buyers became kings. And used car dealers, especially independents selling affordable, reliable trucks, emerged as unexpected winners. Their lots were flooded with demand as Americans sought alternatives to overpriced new models, but not everyone made it out intact. Manufacturers suffered brutal losses. Stellantis saw its market share collapse by over 40%. Ford eliminated its once flagship Raptor lineup entirely. Surviving dealerships were mostly large corporate groups, those with deep pockets to weather months of red ink. On the losing side, millions of consumers trapped in underwater loans, stuck with vehicles worth far less than what they owed. Accelerated. Trends, the crisis didn't just disrupt, it accelerated change. EV adoption surged, fueled by new incentives and collapsing gas truck affordability. Alternative transport models took hold. Rideshare usage jumped 30% in regions where truck ownership was no longer feasible, and the once powerful link between vehicle ownership and personal identity. It began to fracture, especially among younger buyers. But the most important transformation? It went deeper than winners and losers. The new economics of truck ownership, a completely different economic model, emerged from the wreckage. The days of easy financing and inflated trade-ins were gone. In their place, a market built on financial discipline and realistic expectations. Cash transactions became more common. Buyers, burned by predatory loan structures, turned their backs on financing altogether. Dealerships pivoted, offering cash discounts and streamlined processes for buyers who could pay up front. And those rapid trade-in cycles, dead. The 10-year truck became the new norm, replacing the 3 to 4 year cycle that defined the pre-crisis era. That shift forced automakers to build more durable vehicles and pushed dealers to invest in service departments, not just flashy showrooms. The used market matured too. Certified pre-owned programs expanded rapidly, offering real alternatives to buyers priced out of the new market. A new landscape as 2025 came to a close. The truck market finally stabilized, but at dramatically lower price levels. And the scars? They were still visible everywhere. The industry that emerged looked nothing like it had just 2 years before. Trucks were still available, but only to those who could afford them without financial strain. The era of trucks as status symbols was over. In its place, a market focused on utility, longevity, and affordability. We want to hear from you. How has this transformation affected you? Has the truck pricing crisis touched your life or someone you know?